Hello everybody. Hopefully you can hear me, and as you can see from my terminal, I had some technical difficulties with Linux, but we're getting things sorted. So just a second. Alrighty. Hopefully you can hear me. If you're in the chat, please let me know. And I'll get started in a couple of seconds. Alright, I have my thing around here. I did write some stuff. Make docs preview. So today's session is about Calico and Talos Linux. It's an immutable operating system, Talos. And what it does is it runs, hopefully my video is working, it runs an environment similar to BottleRocket and other sort of like immutable OSs. So you don't have a way to change system files in it. There are a bunch of configuration that allows you to run the version of OS that you want to run in configurations. But for the most part, you would need to configure things in advance in order to run your environment. So today my focus is going to be around Kubernetes. And hello there. Hopefully you can hear me. Please let me know in the chat. And if you have any sort of questions, please let me know. I see a clever wordplay on hopefully Toblerones, but yeah. Hey, so let me get started. So today I'm going to talk about running Talos Linux on a KVM infrastructure. Everything that I'm showing you is going to be available in a couple of links that I will show you in a second, so you don't need to write any code down or anything. But just to let you know, this is going to be an IPv4 sort of demo because I've added the IPv6 to Talos documentation too. So I'm going to talk about KVM. So here's a documentation that I wrote. It tells you about what you need to do in order to run your environment. It uses Virsh because again I'm using Linux, but there are other sort of like scenarios that you can run. So I'm assuming you have downloaded your Talos Cattle and your Talos image. And hopefully you want to get started. So our first question is, why Talos Linux? Well, I don't know about you, but if you are familiar with the old sort of virtualization environment, at some point we used to run things like VMware, and those used to be like everything installed on the server. And at some point, we ran into a couple of issues back then, and those were some of the system files or kernel files would get like infected by malware and those sort of stuff. So that's why we got to a point back then to have USB sticks that are read-only. So we would write the operating system for the hypervisor on it and stick it to the server and run the environment from the USB stick. Because again, you don't need a readable system file for your hypervisor. It just needs to do a couple of things, and most of the configurations are inside your VMs. Now, that was, again, virtual machines. I'm just using that analogy to make it easier for myself to say I know stuff, but there is a problem with movements on my screen. So let me just refresh. Okay, it should show things now. Oh, wait a second. Let me refresh. My screen in OBS. All right. Hopefully you can see things. I just cleared the terminal. If you can see it, please let me know. You should see a terminal page right now. Are we good? Not good? Yep. All right. We got the thumbs up. All right. So the idea is I'm going to use a couple of virtual machines. Here is one of them. I just created one. And I'm using Virt. Again, if you want to run the same environment, I've already contributed to the Talos docs, how you can run it on KVM. If you have any sort of other environment, use those documents. Again, whatever is easier for you for your environment. And I do have a control plane right now. So what I'm going to do is, next I'm going to run a worker node. So, where is it? So for my environment, I'm just going to use two nodes, a control plane and a worker node. Now, most of the stuff that we are going to do is going to use Talos Cattle. It's the way to configure your Talos environment, but there's going to be bits and pieces that I would use Tigera operator. Those are specifically for installing Calico. So just to let you know, the only thing right now that I've used that you may not have is this metal AMD 64. Again, this it's not a miracle. I didn't find it on a sidewalk or anywhere. It just, if you come to Talos documentation, you will find their release URL, and you just download it. So here, download the latest metal AMD. So basically, this is going to be your environment. Hopefully things are still showing up. If there is any issues, please let me know, because while I'm talking, I cannot see what's going on the screen. Anyway, so I've got two nodes, two Talos nodes, and what I'm going to do now is to configure them. So first of all, in order to configure Talos, you need to use the Talos command line utility. And in order to do that, again, this is also available on their website, GitHub. You will figure it out, but there's like a bunch of commands and arguments that you can use. I'm going to use a couple of them, not all of them, but anyway, use their documentation. It should be detailed about each one of these routes that you can take. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get the IP address for these two virtual machines and store them into two environment variables. And now I'm going to use the Talos Calico command. So first of all, I need to figure out what disks are available for my virtual machines, because again, I want to install this environment on the disk. So when I got it, again, I'm going to use the Talos command to generate configuration. So if you look here, I'm just using the gen config and the name of my cluster, the IP address, which I stored in a variable, so CPIP, and the port for my cluster to communicate with, and install this. Again, I want this to be installed on this. You could go other routes, but this is going to make my life easier. And I'm going to output everything to a config folder. All right. Now, a couple of things here. If you do this command, you will get a couple of files, and these files are the Talos config. So this is going to be certificates that my cluster are going to use, and you are going to get two funky files. One is control panel YAML. So these are all the things that would be installed with this installation that I'm running, and I think I can do a better sort of representation. All right, so here, these are all the configurations that are going to my cluster. Now, I can here change cluster DNS, for example. I can have, instead of like local.cluster, CSV, those sort of things, I can change those. I can have other forwarders depending on my environment. There are a lot of things that I can do. For instance, like changing the network cards, those sort of things. So all the configurations are here, and you can see the dev VDA that I provided can also be found here. And what I'm interested in is, for this particular session, is this part. So if you come to cluster, network, CNI. So because we are going to talk about Calico, I'm interested in changing this CNI part. So as you can see, the default here is Canal. So Canal is Flannel with Calico. Calico as a policy engine, Flannel as the CNI, a layer 2 CNI. That's why you need Calico. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Calico as both CNI and as the policy engine. So how would I do that? Okay. So first of all, let's get rid of the files that I generated, because I'm going to generate new ones. So everything is going to be the same. I'm just going to add a magical patch config and use a patch.yaml file. think it's config patch or something. Yeah, config patch. Close enough. So config patch. So again, same thing. It generates PKI. It generates the control panel and the worker node. So what is the difference? If you come here, you would see the CNI is now none. So no CNIs will be installed. And the pod subnet, everything else is the same. So what was in the cluster file? The config file that I provided. So here is the file that I used. So this file, this patch file, is going to be all the things that you want to either include or subtract from the default configuration. Similar to Helm, you can just say, oh, from cluster and networking, I want to have a CNI, or I don't want to have a CNI. Or you could just come here and say, whatever this tree is, the machine, I want, for instance, the kubelet to be something else. For instance, I don't want v134. I want maybe v133 or something. So that's how the patch works. You generate your patch. As you can see, I have two examples here, machine and cluster. And in here, I just said, well, for the CNI, don't install any CNIs. And it creates a couple of configurations, the control plane and the worker node. Hopefully these don't need any introduction. And we can get started with the next command. So now that I have the configurations, I'm going to apply them to my virtual machines. The way to do that is, again, using the Talos command and the IP address for each virtual machine and the file for each machine role. So my control plane is going to be CP/IP, and my worker is going to be node IP. Now, if you come to your virtual machine, what's it called, virtual machine interface, you should see a couple of things happening. So as you can see, things will reboot because we applied a new configuration, and it's going to change all the configuration within our environment. On top of that, I've changed the CD-ROM boot from the ISO that I provided to the disk because I want this installation to be a permanent one. And as you can see in this stage, it will tell me what is the stage of my Talos Linux. Right now, it's running, but ready and secure boot are false. Again, secure boot is if and those sort of things I don't want to touch, but we're talking about the ready one. So how we can get that started. So let's go ahead and run a couple of other commands to get things ready. Now, after applying the configuration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again use the folder with, if you remember, the Talos certificates, and use that to tell my Talos cattle how to communicate with my environment. So again, I'm going to use Talos cattle, say the config file, it's going to be endpoint, my cluster endpoint, and I'm going to use a magical command called bootstrap. So basically, what I just done is I've told Talos to I'm ready, all the configurations are in, spin up this cluster, this Kubernetes cluster of mine. So it's going to do some stuff. As you can see, it's going to be busy with the terminal outputs that it's showing me, and after it's done, oh, by the way, there's also this command, get members. It will show you how many virtual machines or how many machines are in your cluster, part of your cluster. So next, what I want to do is I want to communicate to this cluster of mine using kubectl. And if you are a fan of Kubernetes, you know that is how we communicate with Kubernetes. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use Talos Cattle to extract the kube config from the cluster that it's bringing up or bootstrapping. And now if you look in the configs and kube config, you should see all the certificates and IP address, all sort of things, all the goodies. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach my kubectl where my kube config is, the file, and hopefully I can communicate with my cluster. So I got 2 nodes, and I can also use the members command. Again, 2 nodes in a cluster, everything is great, but there is a problem. Things are not ready. If you have been following us, or this is also a CKA certification question, so you would see a cluster and it's not ready. Why is that? The reason is your container runtime interface is not actually running because it cannot find CNI. Now let me find the next command that I wrote somewhere. By the way, these are all off the cuff. Hopefully you know it by now. And if you have any questions, please ask. After I'm done, I'm gonna put all these commands into my Git repository and you can download it. All right, so there are a bunch of choices that you actually there are a bunch of things that you can do with Calico. So in terms of CNI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install Calico on this cluster to get that status ready. So kubectl installing Tigera operator. Tigera operator is the operator that instructs that gets instruction and installs Calico. Right? So I have my Tigera operator ready and running, but again, still nothing is happening. So let's go ahead and let's install Calico. So I wrote down this somewhere around here. Now, after running that, there are a couple of ways that you can actually run Calico in this environment. First of all, if you're following Kubernetes, you know that there are some changes coming to IP tables. And the default is going to be, wait a second, it's going to be CM. So the default is going to be it's DS? Yes. The default data plane is going to be NF tables. We can check this by coming around here. I believe it's egrep mode. Yep. So with Kubernetes 133, 134 and higher, the Q proxy installed with your cluster is going to be in NF tables mode. So with Calico, you have a pluggable data plane. You can choose either go eBPF, NF table, VPP. The choice is yours. Here, I'm going to first show you how to run NF table. So all you need to do is, after installing the operator, you create an installation manifest and you articulate what sort of data plane you want. Here, I want NF tables, and I'm telling my Calico that my cluster CIDR is 10.244.0.0. Now, where did I get this? If you remember, in my config files, around control plane, there was a pod CIDR. Where is CIDR? Yeah, so pod subnets. So this is going to be the internal IP addresses that are going to be used for my pods. There's also a service subnet. We're not going to touch it for this session, but those are going to be IP addresses for all the services that I generate. Cluster IPs, the internal one. If you have load balancer, external IP, that's another story, but let's stick to our story here. So all I'm going to tell is run this instance of Calico using NF tables. By the way, I'm using a bleeding edge release, so hopefully everything works. And after this, we'll get to release Calico 3.30.4. Anyway, so it's gonna take a couple of seconds, and we can actually watch it here. Using Tigera status, I can see what is happening with my CNI installation. Let me just check the chat. The mutable nature of Talos sounds to me like it would be good choice for local virtualized clusters for dev and testing. Yes, but again, you can also go further in running it in production. Given that it's immutable, you would be safe from things like ransomware, any sort of like attack that is trying to corrupt your system. Because again, all you need to do after some sort of like even 0-day attack, all you need to do is restart the server and everything would be back to the point that nothing is like infected. Now, that wouldn't solve the 0-day, but what you could do is before restarting, you can find evidence of what is happening, what happened, and fix that issue with like a security rule, a firewall rule, those sort of things. Anyway, so, by the way, Dobleron, thank you for that, for mentioning that. And as I've showed you, the best place to learn about environments that you can use Talos on is their documentation. So if you come here, there are a bunch of environmends. Obviously, I'm very biased toward KVM because that's the backend that I like. But again, you could go with like VMware, Proxmox, or if it's local, you could go with like Docker, QEMO, VirtualBox, those sort of things. Floor is yours, as they may say. Okay, now, after Calico installation is done, we can check the get nodes. And as you can see, both nodes are ready now. Again, what happened was, because we didn't have any CNIs for our CRI, it would tell us your cluster is not ready. But now because we have everything in place, it would tell you it's ready. And behold, if you check the terminal, your VM should also show you that the cluster is ready. Again, if you remember, that ready check was false. Stage is running, everything is healthy, and we are doing peachy. So you could go ahead and run whatever workload you want to run on this cluster. Now, that being said, let's say you ran NF tables and for some reason you didn't want it and you wanted to, I don't know, use something like eBPF or VPP or any other sort of like data plane. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to know. We talked about immutability. And in Linux, in order to run eBPF, you need to tell your program or whatever it is that want to use eBPF to tell where is the mount point for your eBPF objects. So this is a change that is coming to Calico 334 and 331. So what I need to do is I need to tell my Calico installation where to mount the C group files for its eBPF objects. Oops, I believe this needs to be a patch. So edit, and we need to patch this file. Okay, so in this file, we are adding a new configuration. Oops, wait a second. I do not like to run old vim, actually old wheat for that. All right, so in this file, we are actually configuring what is happening for Felix, the brain of Calico. And here we have added a C group v2 path for, with the release of 330.4 and 331. And what it allows you to do is to change the path for the C group mount. So first of all, we need to edit that. And as you can see, it's now here. Next, what I need to do is, because in an eBPF setup, Calico replaces kubeproxy altogether. You could actually get rid of this. Where is it? Get rid of this kubeproxy pods that are running in your cluster and get more resources. I've got a question from Doblerone. Can you share some experience of how easy debugging is on Talos? Does it add complexity in terms of getting the right tools installed? Okay, in terms of debugging, I would say it requires you to learn a bit, not trying to use SSH and use Talos cattle command. That is the learning curve, in my opinion. And when you get that reality checked, everything is going to become easy. Does it add complexity? Well, if you have the right tools, no. But again, with the right tools, you need to learn what are the right commands. So I don't know if you view learning new commands as complexity, but that is something that I usually do on weekends. So it's sort of like a win-win for me. Anyway, so Oh, by the way, endpoint is getting replaced. So endpoints, it's going to be endpoint slice. So if you are trying to do some sort of program design or whatever, make sure to query endpoint slice. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first use the endpoint directly, then I'm going to use kubeprism. These are kubeprism is a Talos way of running a local proxy on each node and allowing you to communicate with the Kube API server. Anyway, so as I said, because we have our environment up and running and it's using NF tables and we want to use eBPF, we can get rid of this Kube proxy daemon set. All I need to do is, first I need to tell Tigera operator and all other Tigera components where to find the Kubernetes API server. Now, I can do this with this resource. However, I can also do it using the new way that we are introducing in Calico 3.30.4. All right. So in order to show you that, first of all, I need to find it because it's so brand new. I think I wrote it down somewhere around here. All right. So let me just find the. Oh, actually, what I'm doing. So get installation. So if you remember, I talked about this installation file, and this is how you actually can install or instruct the operator to install Calico for you. Now, with the release of 3.30.4 and 3.31, which is coming in a couple of hours, hopefully. So this is 3.31 that I'm using, but 3.30.4 is the same thing. We are giving you a couple of new configurations, and those are where is it? It's a Kube proxy something. I guess I'm passing by it because I don't remember it. Anyway, I've written it down here. So there are two things that you can do. So edit installation default. So in this file, you could either go with NF tables, or you could change this to BPF, and you can also add two new configurations here. First, it's going to be BPF network bootstrap, which does the whole bootstrapping for Calico running in eBPF mode, and Kube proxy management. So if these two are enabled, Kube proxy management will disable Kube proxy, and BPF network bootstrap will run Calico in BPF mode. You would also need to explain what dataplane you want to run, and that is configured with the Linux dataplane. So when you do this, Calico does some stuff. I'm gonna also delete the Calico system deployment Calico API server. Oops. Kubectl delete Oh, that needs to be this. All right, just to make it easier for myself. So all I did was adding two configurations here, Kube proxy management and BPF network bootstrap. And after that, I also enabled or changed my data plane from NF table to BPF. So hopefully things will run. And as you can see, Calico node got restarted. So it's gonna prompt a couple of logs for me. Again, you can see all the logs here. It will tell you what are the things that are running and those sort of stuff. And after a couple of seconds, you would see that my Calico node or the CNI is actually running, and we got rid of the Kube proxy. And this particular cluster is now running without Kube proxy and with eBPF data plane. All right, things are looking up. Whew. Okay, and any sort of questions before I figure out what to do next with this cluster? Oh, by the way, there's a conversation with one of the community members in Talos community Slack, and the question was around migrating from IP tables to NF tables. Now, it should work out of the box if you're using the operator. Now, the problem was that particular person is using a manifest-based installation. And when you have a manifest-based installation, you sort of are declaring that you are a wizard, or like you know a lot about like these sort of like Calico and all its configurations. So that's why a couple of steps that the operator was doing was left out. Now, I brought up that story just to tell you I also did a migration right now. From NF tables, I went to eBPF. And as you can see, it was a couple of switches or values with the operator. And the whole magic is done because Tigera operator is actually looking at that particular file that I showed you. Where is it? Get installation. That particular file that I show you, and it's trying to resync with what is happening there. So if you change something, for instance, if you change from IP tables to NF tables, from NF tables to eBPF, from IP tables to eBPF, or I don't know, take your pick. If you change something, the operator will try to make sure that Calico is running with the latest configurations. Now that being said, this might sort of seems magical because again, I don't have Kube proxy, but things are still running. So let's do something that is a little bit fun and it's on par with the stuff that we are actually doing right now. So as you might know, it's a little bit difficult to figure out what is happening with eBPF. And it's because eBPF programs are compiled in like binary files and they get injected to the kernel. So you sort of don't have that much visibility that you had with like, for instance, IP tables, those sort of things. Now, it is something that the application programmer or developer needs to build for you, and that is the troubleshooting tools that you would need. With Calico, if you are running eBPF, you can use this command, which is invoking the Calico node binary inside your Calico node daemon set. Again, this is right now trying to query the first node, but again, you can be you can run this against a pod, so you target a specific node, and this will give you a couple of commands that you can use in order to figure out what is going on. For instance, right now, I don't have, where is it? I don't have the kube proxy pods. So let's figure out what is happening. There is a nat command with the eBPF subcommand, and you can dump it. So if you dump that, it will show you that what are the nats that are happening right now with your eBPF data plane. So currently, my Calico eBPF is programming these nats on one of my nodes, and it's actually trying to push traffic that are coming to port 443 to port coming to port 6443 to 443. And as you can see, so the kube proxy and the stuff that are happening are now handled by the service manager that the Calico eBPF is running. So all your services, any service that you create, will now be implemented in eBPF objects. Any sort of questions? Oh, I need to show something. So every command that I used is going to be uploaded to this QR code. There are also other sort of things that I have in this repository. It's all about my presentations. I think 2 weeks ago I talked about secure gateway API, those sort of things for CNCF. But anyway, everything is going to be here. It's going to be uploaded in like an hour or so. And with that, I ran out of the things that I know about Talos. So your next stop should be our documentation, which is docs.tigera.io, Calico related questions, Kubernetes related questions, Talos related questions that have Calico in it, because again, we are not expert about Talos. If you have Talos questions, go to their docs. So this is the URL for that. They have everything categorized and nice and neat. By the way, this is their new theme, which is quite good. I would say it's an improvement in my opinion, because this is the old one. So see, their community is actually doing a lot of stuff. And if you want to help, you could come to either of our GitHubs. So ours would be Project Calico. If you have any sort of questions, if you want to run any sort of like ideas, for instance, there is something that you want in Kubernetes networking and you don't know how to achieve it, you could create an issue for us. We'll try to figure out how to do it. Or if you are hands-on, you can create some sort of patch for us and we'll merge it to do whatever amazing thing you want to do with Kubernetes with Calico. If you are trying to add something to Talos, for instance, like me, you want to add stuff to their documentation, visit their GitHub. That is their QR code and link. everything should be open source and amazing. Any last minute questions that I forgot to answer? Well, with that, thank you to all the viewers. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, again, these are some of the ways to find me. You can also come to our Slack channel. It's slack.projectcalico.org. Ask any questions. We'll try to answer it. Here's a QR code. Whoops, that is not the right QR code. Here's a QR code for slack.projectcalico.org. Ask your questions. We'll answer it. Actually, hopefully I will answer it. If I don't know the answer, I will get some of my colleagues who are way more brighter than me to answer it. Well, thank you for joining, and see you in the next one. Bye.